Great. I think we can get started. Let me share my screen. Hello, everyone. I hope I'm audible. I'm thrilled to welcome all of you to a very special DevRev webinar. We recently hosted our biggest Effortless yet at New York City last month. It was packed with powerful speakers, disruptive ideas, and a bold launch which we think will redefine how we work. Today, along with a special speaker, we'll relive the insights which shaped the webinar. Welcome to our very first Effortless Recap. I'd like to start with a question. Are you truly an AI native business? Think about this deeply and let us know. This is something you can put in your answers in the comments box. This is something that we will break down in different ways during the course of this webinar. Introducing your host and speaker for today, I am Aditya and I'm part of DevRev's marketing team. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Mollie Holland, who is the CVP of Customer Experience here at DevRev. Welcome, Mollie. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Aditya. Excited to be here. It was such an energizing and really unique experience at our last Effortless conference in New York, and I can't wait to share more with the audience here.
Looking forward to it. Excited to host you. What really set the tone for the entire conference was our CEO Dheeraj's keynote. I thought it would be a good place to start by listening to a snippet of his.
Everybody's being asked this question. Are you an AI native business? And everybody's raising their hands and like, of course, the board's asking us, and we're like, of course we are. And the reason why it's looking that simple is because it's supposed to be simple. We now have a new language in which we can instruct the machine, which is English or natural language. And everything can be prompt engineered anyway. So what's the big deal? Why can't we just all do this and call ourselves AI native? But there's obviously this report that's very sobering. Now you can actually argue that it's probably not all true, and the fact that we've had better than these numbers coming from a recent report from Wharton. But by and large, it's true that a lot of pilots have just not gone anywhere.
95% of Gen AI pilots fail. That's a staggering number. Molly, could you help us understand why this is happening and what organizations can do to move on and be part of that 5%?
Yeah, I love talking about this actually. I bring this one up, and I think we've all heard a lot about this MIT report that came out, but the devil is in the details, right? So the reason why these generative AI pilots are failing is mostly due to a lack of structure around data, workflows, and observability that you need to really to have in place to be able to reinforce the outcomes that you're looking for in the model. And, teams are trying to build things themselves. They're, setting up these kind of hacky solutions with a pilot that's then failing and of course then not getting that value by moving something into production. And so that's why we feel it's really, really important to focus on organizing, assimilating, and observing the information around an AI pilot and around your business data and processes. And that means really bringing everything into a single structure where the ontology across teams, across functions, across businesses can be understood and turn that knowledge into something that an agent can actually use. You also then have to really be able to have that observability that's going to allow you to know what's happening across the different agents and processes that you're trying to streamline. And it's very much easier said than done. Because right now companies have data spread out everywhere and teams are constantly context switching. And that's how we know that really work is broken today, right? You're copying and pasting things from different places. You're trying to like synthesize things from 10 different tools. But the world is changing fast, and we really think that there's a way to rise above those critical failures. So, in the next slide, Aditya, you can see here that to address those, how to truly be AI native, it means having the capability to break down those data silos in a way that's easy. Because another thing that I see a lot with customers is they went to work with an AI partner, and it was either a point solution that only addressed information with one particular tool, or they had to spend a ton of time cleansing data and fixing things before the AI solution was able to really provide any value. And we believe that that's really doesn't have to be the reality. We feel that, your agents can really work alongside your teams, have access to all that information so they can understand and take action, because it's not just about ask and answer. And then that will allow agents to really handle that tedious, repetitive work. So you and your teams can really do a lot more, deep reasoning and understanding of what's confronting your business. So I think that's where we think, this idea of AI native is going to evolve to.
And that's fascinating. That is at the heart of how we think enterprises will work in the future. Agents working alongside humans and being able to take actions. What's more interesting are similar lines of thought which were echoed by some of our distinguished speakers who attended Effortless. Let's hear a couple of them. So we had quite a few speakers who graced us with their time and gave quite a few interesting ideas. We'll start with Alex Demarcus, who is a professor at UC Berkeley and the co-founder and chief scientist at Bespoke Labs. Let's listen to a small piece from his talk.
These agents, Diraj, as you said, don't have any agency because they're just three predetermined LLM calls with fixed prompts. To me, when an agent has agency, it means it's running in a for loop. So it decides how many steps it will do. It decides when it is done. So it has all this dynamic independence that we call agency, right? The choice of what tool to call next, the choice if to repeat, the choice to reflect and revise their answer. But right now, people cannot do this. What I'm seeing is people make 3 steps or 4-step line graph agents, and these are okay. They optimize them a lot. But the moment they try to do more than 3-4 steps, the agents become unreliable and unstable. And this is called the long horizon problem.
Two major takeaways for me from Alex's talk were the long horizon problem and the need for real agents to have real agency. Molly, could you share on your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I don't know about you guys, but I can really only understand about 60 to 70% of what Alex ever talks about, because he's just such an intellectual about these problems and things with AI and agents. But man, I love surrounding myself with people like him so that I can just continue to glean that knowledge and understanding. He's solving some very interesting real world problems through the Stanford lab and some of the different endeavors that he's a part of. And so I do love this idea of what does real agency mean? It's not an easy problem. And in fact, like he mentions, this long horizon problem is something that many AI companies are struggling with, because having that sustained context to have this very deep and ongoing dialogue is a very, very difficult problem to solve. But in business, like in business context, that's really what you need to be able to answer and solve the hard problems and close the loop on hard things that, customers or your team needs help with. And so, to start with that though, and like really understand that, I think it's important for everyone to just understand what is an agent. Because we believe that if agents are able to do this, agents are going to be able to fix this problem of work really feeling broken in the sense of having to kind of, copy paste things a million places, context switch constantly. But to disrupt that, we have to solve this problem. And so, like, what is an agent? There's really four major elements that come together to create an agent, and that we believe it takes to have an agent have real agency. So the first thing is that the agent has to have access to knowledge. And for ChatGPT, for example, that's just like access to public web information and data. It has to be able to have a place where the knowledge is understood and isn't fragmented and is unified into kind of something, a word we like to use is a single memory. And that means it's truly integrated. The second thing that agents have to have is skills. And that means it has to know how to do things, when it should do it, what it should do once it accesses that information or gets, that type of context. And that is, not just a vector database that enables something like semantic search, which is what many AI solutions just put on top of some unstructured data and call it good. And what I mean by unstructured data is, anything that's in like a form or a template, that's structured data. Unstructured data is like documents and articles and things like that. And so a lot of AI solutions just take this idea of a vector database to enable semantic and syntactic search and call that an AI solution. But we believe that to have real agency, you have to have a graph database. And what a graph database does is it captures and understands all these relationships between entities. And that's the hard business problem, right, to solve, is that you have to have the context across businesses, teams, functions, like I mentioned before, and know how to connect those things and the interconnectedness between them to be able to truly have an agent that understands your business deeply enough to have real agency. And then, in addition to that, and kind of lastly, in terms of a skills perspective, there's this, piece you have to think about is like to truly be analytical and like really understand the depth of the data and richness that exists in like data warehouses, for example, there has to be this understanding of SQL. And the good thing is, because SQL is the most efficient way, right, to query deep and large data sets. Luckily, because there is so much public information about SQL out there, LLMs are now being able to truly understand SQL. And what we believe at DevRev and have built is this idea of text to SQL and this SQL skill. Essentially, you can think about that your agents will have access to. The third thing that makes an agent is rules. There have to be rules surrounding what information the agent is allowed to access, what it can and cannot do. And then last but not least, you have to make sure that the agent has oversight. You need to make sure you know what's happening with the agent, how it's performing, what it's doing. And that can't be just by humans reviewing everything, right? It has to be through some sort of systematic way that allows you to really gauge the performance, accuracy, trueness, completeness, things like that. And so if you bring all these things together, we believe that having that depth in the skills I talked to, and then all four of these elements together, is what's going to create an agent that has real agency. That is an agent that is able to connect things, reason extremely deeply, retrieve knowledge in a far more intelligent, engaging, conversational, and trustworthy way for people to use. So, these are challenges that a lot of companies are trying to overcome right now. But I would say most AI solutions are point AI solutions that are just at that really very basic level, scratching the surface.
Thank you for those wonderful insights, Molly, especially the nuance on why bolt-on solutions don't work, which essentially ties back to our earlier question on what it means to be truly AI native. Let's move on to another speaker. We had Alvina Antar at the event. She is the Chief Digital Officer at F5. Let's take a look at a portion from her talk.
To be able to have the governance to truly have the governance with role-based access controls and really have the insight as to yes, we want to empower every employee, but we also need to have the governance in place to ensure that when you have a horizontal application, that it's actually feeding the role-based access controls across the application that you've set up, and that is the importance, is ensuring that we're partnering with organizations that actually have security at the heart of their design and governance at the heart of their design. And that's actually what's held a lot of people back from adopting AI is the security and governance required to ensure that you're not just driving innovation, but that you're driving a trusted innovation.
Alvina's talk on trusted innovation essentially hinged on certain pillars. Could you please elaborate them for us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, because I think like trust in AI and trust in agents is one of the most important things for a company to establish, right? And that's a bit of what I was talking about too, right? Is if you don't have observability of an agent, how can you trust what the agent is doing? And knowing that the agent is doing what you expected it to, and not surfacing information that the agent is not supposed to. And that's something that, we've spent a lot of time on at DevRev. And really, I think anyone evaluating an AI tool should think really deeply about and make sure they feel extremely certain about the performance of and the parameters and the checks and balances that are in place. Is this idea of bringing all this information together is great, but what if how that information is brought together is not permission aware? Because if it's not permission aware, right, you have a significant risk of having information exposed to people it shouldn't be. Financial companies and, companies like F5, where Alvina is, like, this is an incredibly important criteria that has to be put in place before any AI solution will be considered. And, I think, that's something that we've learned a lot from our customers on as we've worked through a lot of different implementations with AI agents. And I think there's a lot of really interesting things happening around AI orchestration, where you're deciding what should you build versus what should you buy, and how those agents work together to make sure that you have the utmost confidence in the security and trust of what the agents are doing, both from yourself and from your vendors.
Thank you. Thank you again, Molly. One of our final speaker snippets is of Dev, who's a board member and the ex-CEO of MongoDB. Let's listen to a segment from his chat with Dheeraj.
And so whenever I see bad news, I automatically assume two things or hear bad news. One is I'm the last to know. And the second is it's far worse than what they're telling me. Mm-hmm. Because if you think about it, I'll give it a simple example. Imagine one of your sales reps is having a problem with a customer. The customer is like upset about something. By the time they tell their manager, the manager tells their VP, and the VP comes and talks to you saying, hey, we're having a slight problem with Acme Company, but we're on top of it, all is well. And that's happened to me. Then 3 months later, Acme Company churns, and you're like, WTF, what the hell happened? Right? Because as bad news travels up the organization, it gets increasingly filtered, so all the sharp edges of that information gets dulled off, and you get a very anodyne kind of perspective. So whenever I see or hear bad news, I'm automatically assuming it's far worse than what people are telling me. And then you start digging and say, tell me more, dig in. And what people find is like, holy shit, this company is really focused on solving problems because they're taking action. That's a bias to action to solve something versus kicking the sand under the rug and just ignoring the problem.
Well, this is real conversations.
Real conversation, yes.
No, the biggest takeaway for me here was authenticity. How do you think authenticity ties in with AI and people?
Yeah, I mean, first I'll just say Dev was one of the most popular speakers at the entire event. And if you're interested, we do have the full session recording available to preview. Maybe we can send that out as a follow-up to this, Aditya. But the words he shared just through the whole session were extremely profound and really interesting. And everyone was kind of buzzing about it the entire rest of the conference. But yeah, he brings up these really, really interesting points around authenticity. And I think that's what we're all really struggling with right now in terms of this revolution of AI that's happening, is how is AI going to augment? Is it going to replace? We don't see it that way. That is not what we believe as DevRev. We think that AI is just going to make all teams better. I think, Dev talks about it in terms of like a leadership lesson, but I think it applies to how we think about this coexistence of AI and humans as well. And just, always making sure that you feel that trust and confidence in what's happening, and are using these moments of maybe challenge to find that creativity that's going to help us really innovate and totally change the way we all work, right? It's something actually I'm working with my team on a frankly like daily basis these days, is not just reviewing the business and seeing what's happening in the numbers or with our customers, but it's also just digging really deeply in ourselves to think about how can we innovate in our process. And that's another big one that the MIT study references, is that a big hurdle to companies being successful with AI implementations is just how they do not adapt their process or culture to take advantage of these AI agents. And so I think that's something that we all have to really reckon with.
Yeah, and all this essentially ties in to the launch that we did at Effortless with computer. Bolly, would you want to take a few minutes to talk to our audience about, in more depth, about our vision for computer and how it's helping organizations?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Really, like I said, there's so much chatter about AI replacing humans, and we really think about it as this like evolution of team dynamics and team intelligence. And our answer to that team intelligence is computer. So if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Um, and then, moving on to what is computer? Computer is really like the how we think we're going to be able to help solve this problem of work being broken. But what does that really mean? What it means is that we believe this agent can become your teammate. And to do that, though, it has to have these elements we talked about that gives an agent real agency. It has to have access to information. So we bring that in to DevRev via our AirSync technology. For those of you that are on that have been customers of ours for a while, maybe this is something you've heard of called AirDrop. Same thing, right? It's this patented technology that we've built over the last many, many years to make it extremely seamless and easy to bring that information from your existing platforms and systems and into DevRev. And then also push that information back out in a very like seamless, almost invisible fashion. The next piece of that is memory. And I mentioned this before, is like, this is where all of that interconnectedness, that connection and understanding of ontology across businesses, functions, concepts comes together. And this is, really that special sauce that not just unites the data, but then makes the data extremely useful to you and your teams. And, last but not least, those things then enable these really powerful, frankly, like activities to take place and functions as a team member, right? Is your team member can be there, your computer team member can be there to surface the information, deep information, right, that you're looking for, not just in a syntactic way, not just in a semantic way, but in a way that it truly deeply understands your business context, the different entities. And then it can take action. And I think that's where this gets really interesting, and where a lot of AI solutions really stop is this is not just about living in the world of search or ask and answer, but it is in the world of completing that cycle of action where you don't have to go to another tool to make a change once you learn the information that or you gain the information you were seeking. But you're able to just ask your teammate computer to take that action for you. Hey, go update the severity of that ticket, or, go move the stage of that opportunity, or go update the status of that order for that customer. So that allows you then to really do some interesting things that allow you to act on those insights across your data, either in a like deep, meaningful way because of the analytics and that SQL capability, that SQL database, or through these actions that can go across many, many different platforms and systems.
Thank you. Thank you for condensing all those insights into, bite-sized points for us. We heard our vision for computer. We heard what our speakers had to say on AI. And now I think it's time to hear how some of our customers have benefited from computer. We'll start with Steve. Molly, would you want to do a quick introduction of Steve and our partnership with Bill.com?
I would love to. Steve is a great partner to us. And he was a big champion of bringing in DevRev because of some unique business challenges that they were facing. Not unique, frankly. Frankly, I think they're business challenges that a lot of organizations are facing, that are using Salesforce and Agentforce. And so we wanted to be that, kind of true agent solution for them that they weren't able to find elsewhere. And so Steve is CIO at Bill.com, and he's, like I said, has been a champion of ours through the entire implementation and go live of DevRev at Bill.com. So he did a quick session with Michael, our head of product, our corporate vice president of product and design, on the stage, and talked a bit about what that looks like for them and why they chose DevRev. So let's see the video.
Yeah, let's listen to a quick clipping of Steve.
Have an AI team. We're building our own agents. In fact, we just announced this week that our first 5 agents that are supporting our customers. And part of that is actually DevRev. In addition to the agent, it's working with DevRev. So it's agent to agent communication. But the reason we looked at many different companies, and everyone had very similar pitches, but nobody had that contextual layer or that architecture that you all had created. That's what really sets it apart. Indexing, we all know that indexing can cause issues after time. Search becomes a pain. We've heard it over and over. We've experienced it, where we wanted something that was going to last for a long time. Mm-hmm. And while looking at it, you all were able to spin up a pilot within no time at all. Everyone else was telling us it was going to be a month. So it was an easy pick. Yeah.
That was Steve from Bill.com. We were hoping to have Alex on the call. I think he has some issues joining with the Zoom link. But Molly,
yeah, he's on actually as a panelist. Anya, are you able to get him access to be able to speak?
Not yet, Molly. I'm trying to figure that out. Not yet.
Okay. So hopefully we can maybe come back to this, but Alex kindly decided to join today to speak from his experience. Alex was actually able to join our user workshop that we do the day before. So if people are interested in that, we'd love to hear from you. We do an all-day kind of hands-on learning lab. This was all about computer and how to use, computer as your teammate for your customers or your teams. And then Alex also attended the Effortless conference with us and saw Steve speak as well. So let's maybe keep going, Aditya, and hopefully before the end, Alex, we're able to figure out how to have Alex join.
Yeah. In the meanwhile, we could probably spend some time on how some of our other customers have found value with computer, starting with Bolt, who've also been one of our long-standing partners. Molly, any thoughts on this? How Bolt has derived value from computer?
Yeah, so also at that workshop that I mentioned, actually called Computer Conversations, the team from Bolt joined as well. Alex presented with some of his teammates, and then Chelsea from Bolt, they've been longtime customers of DevRev, shared with us a lot of the agentic experiences that they've been able to implement at Bolt that have really revolutionized their support processes. And I encourage everyone, if you're interested, we have a full case study about this one on our website that you can go find. Maybe we can share that link as well, Aditya, as a follow-up here. But I'll say like what they've done is really use the agentic capabilities for their support teams to the maximum impact. They have many agents. I'm going to guess over 100 by now, agent skills that they've built within DevRev or are using that were out of the box from DevRev to make their support process really efficient. They run a very small and lean support team and support millions of shoppers and thousands of merchants through their platform because of the way in which they've been able to use agentic AI. And you can see some of the really incredible metrics and kind of KPIs that they've achieved here because of that implementation. And so happy to share more with anyone after this as well on their use cases.
Yes, thank you for that, Molly. One other partner that we'll probably would like to highlight is Fame. Again, one of our trusted partners. Molly, your thoughts on how we've added value to their processes?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, Courtney and the Fame team also joined us at that computer conversations workshop I mentioned. And you can see here they've been really, really active users of computer with Zendesk. And what they found is that the AI capabilities of DevRev were so incredible in allowing them to look across all of the data that they had in Zendesk and then set up kind of playbooks and process and agents related to first starting with just that kind of search and ask and answer. And then that's really morphed into a lot more productivity gains for them as they've adopted more of the DevRev tool. They're more of a newer customer, I would say, in the last probably 9 months here. And so Courtney talked a lot about how that's really transformed how she, as a customer success manager, and the rest of the CSM team has transformed how they work with their customers as well.
That's great. We are, in fact, doing a webinar with Courtney next week around the same time. So I would urge all of you to join that to learn more about how Fame derived value from computer and DevRev. Let me maybe take a minute here to check if Alex was able to join.
I don't think so, unfortunately.
Okay, okay, no problem. So I think in that case, this would, bring us to a close of our first ever effortless recap. Thank you all for joining in. I hope this added value to all of you.
Are
I
we
would
are we doing Q&A too, Aditya?
Yes, I will check the comments and chat box if there are any questions. In the meanwhile, I would urge all of you to scan these QRs and stay connected by joining our various communities. Let me take a minute to see if there are any questions that have come in. I would urge all of you to drop in your questions in the chat box.
Yeah, would love to hear any questions anyone has. Okay, seems like maybe nothing. Thanks, Carlos. Thank you for joining.
Perfect. You can drop in your notes. We'll be happy to answer them later too. We will send you the recording and the follow-ups that Molly mentioned. Thank you, Molly, again for taking the time out and for really distilling the event's highlights into practical takeaways. Thank you to our audience for attending, and we'll see you soon again with another webinar. Bye.
Bye-bye.